Hi, I'm Ronnie Walter. Welcome to my channel. Here we make some fun and lighthearted and playful art with line and watercolor, and I am so glad you're here. Today's video, I'm going to walk you through how to make this really sweet little card. We're coming into celebration season here, and I'm very excited about this one. I think it's sweet. It's pumpkins, and I love pattern. But it doesn't look Halloween-y. It's very much for the season of Thanksgiving and just general gratitude, which I have a lot of on this channel. And I'm so happy you are here. One of the things I'm super grateful for. And let's paint some pumpkins. Okay, well, welcome. Here's a blank piece of paper that's going to be super cute in a matter of minutes. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is draw 3 really simple pumpkins. And one of the reasons why I like to draw pumpkins is they are kind of wonky to begin with. So if your drawing's a little wonky, it just adds to the charm of pumpkins. Okay, so I'm using a graphite pencil. This happens to be a 4B, which means nothing except you want a softer lead is usually better than a hard one. And I'm making really, really light pencil marks because I don't want to erase much, and it will be better for the watercolor. Okay, so I just did one in the front. I'm leaving a little space here for a greeting. Actually, you know what? Look at that. Okay, I'm going to add this. I want it to end about here. Okay, back to my wonky pumpkin. Okay, I mean, seriously, you guys, they actually look better when they're kind of lumpy because then they look like the real deal. I'm gonna make a nice big round one there, and then I'm gonna make a taller one over here. So you just wanna balance your composition a little bit. I'm gonna indicate the stems. And again, they can be really funny and wonky. Okay, you've just done your drawing. I will have a tracing of this, but you don't really need one. So I've left room at the bottom for when we add a greeting when we do the line work. But we're going to start with watercolor today. So the first thing, you've noticed I have my kneaded eraser. Now, when you put watercolor on top of pencil, which I'm going to try to avoid, but you never know, the pencil will not erase after that. I don't like that shape very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and fully erase that little bit. And then with the kneaded eraser, and that's kneaded like kneaded bread, K-N-E-A-D, you could just go in and sort of daub at your pencil, and it gets a whole lot of it out, but you can still see where you're going. And that is a very handy trick. So it's like disappearing ink. So it's barely on there. I can see it. I don't know if you can. Okay, so I'm going to use my watercolors, and I'm going to use my normal palette. These are tube paints that I have put in here and let dry, and they look a little gnarly, but they work just fine. There are a variety of brands. I'm not very brand loyal, I have to say. And then I have an auxiliary palette that has some extra colors that didn't fit in the other one. And then I have my secret compartment. Okay, it's not really a secret. It's just extra space. I just like calling it that. It's where we keep the gold bullion. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this out of the way for a second. And I also have a water bottle, which I'm now going to spray my paints, get them nice and activated. I won't be using all of the paints, but why not get them wet? You never know. Okay, so those are going to just do their thing over there. Outside of camera range, there is going to be, I have 2 jars of water, one that I intend to keep clean, and one that I swoosh my brush out when I'm changing color. So you want to keep one pretty clean, but frankly, my students, when I teach live, always laugh at me because I'm always mixing them up. Okay, I'm also using a simple number 10 round brush. A decent brush will serve you well. In the $10 to $15 range is all you have to spend. This one happens to be Jerry's Artorama private label, which is, someone gave this to me years ago, and it's a tried and true brush. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is, now we're going to do these as patterns, because I love making patterns. And the first one we're going to do a gingham. Now, I also love gingham. Oh, you know what else I have here? Grab a, nope, not that one. Just a piece of watercolor paper. Now, by the way, this is cold pressed watercolor paper. It is 4 inches by 5 1/8. And the reason I do it that size is because then I can make it into a card that fits in an envelope. But you can make what's cool is if you've got a bunch of envelopes, or you buy a bunch of envelopes like at a thrift store, make your cards to fit the envelopes. It's way easier to make a card fit an envelope than an envelope to fit a card, if you catch my drift. Okay, so, but having this extra piece of watercolor paper, you can test your paints, you can test them on this tester paper instead of your actual artwork, where if you hate it, well, sorry, you're just going to either have to hate it or figure it out. I go for the figuring out. So what I do is I'm putting in some clean water into this palette, and you always go from the paint to the palette to the paper. You're able to have a lot more control of how much paint you have, the consistency of it. I'm going to add a little Cadmium Red Light to this to make it orangier. Yes, that's a very lovely autumnal orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a gingham. And when you make gingham, it's actually really fun. But you have to let things dry in between. So when you work in watercolor, we kind of work in sections. So if you don't want your paint to bleed from one thing to another, you let it dry and then you can come back and work it. Okay, so with this nice, luscious orange paint, load up your brush because you want to be able to make a mark. And I'm going to start, whenever I stripe something, I start in the middle of the object. And that seems to make it work out. So I'm just making a consistent stripe down there. And then I'm going to take another one next to it. And the thing about when you do a gingham is a very even plaid. So you want to make your spaces and your stripes about the same distance. Okay, there you go. Okay, so the other thing I do is I just dab that off on the paper towel, and then I'm going to hoover up a little extra of that paint. Now I'm going to let that dry, because when I come across, I want it to be dry. Okay, so I'm going to leave that as is right now. This other pumpkin, this one over here, is going to be solid orange. So I'm going to go back into that orange and grab a whole bunch into the brush. And this part of the brush between the ferrule and the tip is called the belly of the brush. And when you're trying to move a lot of paint, you want to make sure that that is loaded up with paint. Otherwise, you run out on your way down and you're like, I don't have enough paint in there. So you can see how much paint I'm able to spread because it's all up there in the belly of the brush. So I'm just moving that around. That also is going to be striped later. But right now we're just gonna, and you know, if it's a little blobby at the bottom, that's fine because pumpkins are blobby. Okay, again, we're just letting that do its thing. Let it dry. Be patient. Patience has never been my strong suit, but with watercolor, it kind of teaches you that. Okay, these two things have to dry before I can put the middle one in. So we're just gonna let that dry. If you have one of those heat gun thingies, you could use that if you want. I'm just going to be patient and wait for it to dry. So here we are, watching paint dry. So I will be back when this dries and we'll go to the next step. So that paint has dried sufficiently. It's not 100%, but it's enough. Okay, I'm going back to the original orange on this future gingham And again, because I start in the middle, I'm going to come in and come across. And you start to get the gingham effect, but we're going to push that later. And so I'm kind of, subtly covering, painting a curve across this pumpkin. And this is very satisfying. I've always loved painting gingham. We're going to have to find a design that's heavy on the gingham. Maybe we'll do a gingham kitty or something. And for those of you who have been asking, I've got a plan coming up for a dog. I tend to do cats because cats seem to be universal. The thing with painting dogs, let's just go off on a tangent here. The thing with painting dogs is dogs, cats are, and I apologize in advance to the cat people, but cats basically have the same body shape, about the same size. There's certainly the big dudes. But dogs, a dog could be a Chihuahua or a dog can be an Irish Wolfhound. So when people say, oh, draw a dog, I'm like, which dog? So anyway, but I have a dog coming up, fairly generic. You can make it your own. But anyway, I digress. We're on pumpkins right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is that's dry enough. I'm going to stripe this pumpkin like big, wide, like rugby stripes. And I'm going to make this a little more red, a little more intensity in the color. Yes, I know I just contaminated that yellow a little bit. And I want it to have enough contrast. This is why we test our paints. Is there enough contrast to make that statement? And I'm declaring, yes, it is. Okay, again, I am starting in the middle of this object. I'm just going to do big, chunky stripes. When I'm doing a pattern mixing story, you want to have enough variety of kind of scale to your objects. Otherwise, it can start to just feel really solid. Okay, that's all I'm doing with that one. I'm going to hoover up a little bit. Hoover. Just get that excessive bit off there. And here's how you really push the gingham story. Is come in with just a slightly darker color like we've done. And then you just paint in the squares. And if you have a good brush, like I said, this is a number 2. This thing can move some paint, but also has a nice tip on it. So you don't need to have a whole bunch of paint brushes. And I usually discourage people from buying sets of brushes when they're first starting out, because you end up with your favorites. So maybe it comes in a pack of 7 and you use 2. And then you have those other 5 hanging around making you feel guilty. Can a paintbrush make you feel guilty? Why, yes, it can. All art supplies have guilt-inducing properties. It comes with the territory, and we have to give them a good talking to. Okay, see how that is starting to look really ginghamy? I think it looks really sweet. And that is how you make gingham, kids. So that just pushed that whole story. Okay, now their stems are going to be sort of a greenish brown. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in, I'm going to experiment a little bit. I already have in my palette, I have a green, which is the Winsor Green. I got a little more of that. And then I have this Sap Green, which is a little more olivey. I just want a nice autumnal green. Ooh, that's awfully pretty. You know what? I really like that color. I'm going to reserve that for this pumpkin. And I'm going to start another pile over here of mostly Sap Green. I don't need very much paint for this. And then I'm going to add like the titchiest amount of this orange. See if I can brown that up a little bit. Yes, all of a sudden that became much browner. Oh, isn't that cool? See how, you know, you don't have to have these giant sets of paints. You can make a lot of stuff. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. I added some of a warm red, and all of a sudden we have a very lovely brownish green. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. Again, why we swatch. Okay, so I'm just going to come in and make these really quite irregular looking stems, because that's what they are when you see them in the big pile at the outside the supermarket or at the pumpkin patch. We took a driving trip last weekend, and just, you know, I live in Wisconsin, and so the pumpkins are just all in the field, and they just look so cool out there. It's like, oh my gosh, look at those orange pumpkins. I know they grow out of the ground and everything. I'm not that much of a city girl, but wow, it's really cool to see them all out there. Okay, so see how this is coming together? So simple, so cute. Okay, so I'm going to, again, oh, you know what we can do? Well, because, you know, we tend to, you know, I have to wait till I absolutely know that that stem and those darker red orange stripes are dry before I start this pumpkin. In the meantime, since I have to let that dry, I'm gonna go ahead and put a shadow under here. One of my favorite shadow colors is Payne's Gray. It's just a nice color to have. It's kind of a stormy gray. Again, we want to make sure. And when you do a shadow, all I'm doing is dragging like a straight line across, just right to the edge of where the pumpkin would start to curve upwards. You don't want to be heavy-handed with this. You just kind of let it happen and drag it across and drag it across. And that looks very shadowy. Now, when this dries a little, I think I'm going to come in and hit it just a little heavier, because, you know, when you look at an object that's sitting on a table, the shadow is darker right at the bottom because it's just casting a deeper shadow. So I'm going to come in and push that idea once this dries. So again, I will come back. All right, let's do this green pumpkin. Okay, so I started mixing up some green. I think I need a little more. So again, it's the Winsor Green. I guess it's their patented green. I don't know. I suppose I could do research on that, but why would we? We just like the color. And I'm going to add a little more water to that. I think we're near that other color. Close enough. Okay. So we're going to go in, and I'm just going to, again, I've got a bunch of paint. You want to just suck up that paint into your brush. You don't want to be stingy with the paint, and you don't want to really go over what you've done too many times. Sometimes I see that with students where they're, you know, adding more paint when it's super wet isn't really going to give you more intensity. You kind of have to wait for it to dry. Okay. Well, that's a really pretty green. I'm just going to add a touch of green in these just for a little interest. Not for anything else except, that's cool. I think that's cool is a good enough answer for anything. Just to give it a little more something. Okay, again, watercolor is about letting it dry, being patient, and let it do its thing. Okay? So when this dries, I'm going to put some big blobby polka dots on there. And then when it dries, we're going to do our line work, and it's going to be really, really cute. Lovely time of year to be doing a thing like this. In the U.S., it will be Thanksgiving. I think Canadian Thanksgiving is this month. You could probably knock these up. Or is it over yet? Okay, Canadian friends. Again, I could Google that. But yes, we're going to let that dry. And now it's time to polka dot. One of my favorite things to do. So I'm taking this green, same green that when we did the base, but I'm just adding a lot more intensity of color. I still want it to have a fairly liquid, well, it is watercolor after all. And again, we're testing. That is a nice contrast. Okay, so okay, I have polka dotted a lot of things over the years. And yes, that is a verb, polka dotting. I want to start with a partial dot. For some reason, I don't know, it just makes more sense to me. So I kind of go at an irregular place. I don't want it to like hook right up to that thing. It's kind of a weird design thing. And I want to have the scale. These are going to be pretty fat polka dots. So I want to come in, and again, you'll want to hoover up as you go a little bit. So once you've made that first commitment, that's kind of the size of your dot. And you're just doing two sides and then fill it in. And then they tend to just tell you where to go. And if you're not comfortable with just freehanding your dots, feel free to do a slight pencil mark of where you want them to land. That's okay. And then I'm ending with a partial one over here. Yes. All right, well, those look really cute. So we don't want to disturb that. So what I'm going to do is, now that's pretty wet, putting the paints aside. We're pretty much done with the paints right now until I go back to that shadow. I'm going to take my, where is it? Where's my little see-through ruler? Okay, I couldn't find my newer one. This one's kind of an older, gnarly one. But I'm just going to tell you, if you like rulers, these little see-through rulers are really handy. That's the name of them, see-through. It's like the letter C hyphen through, T-H-R-U. But they're very handy because you can just go in and see exactly along the edge of your paper where it lines up. So I'm going to make a really light pencil line, 1/4 of an inch all the way around this card. And again, I'm using a light hand because we just don't want to erase a lot. Light hand. And I'm going, like I said, it's 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So with this, you don't have to do that. You know, with a regular ruler, you're like 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. You know, you just lay it on there and it shows you where it is. Very handy for a ruler. Okay. I'm also, in mine, I'm going to put a little greeting down here. And you can put any greeting you like. On this one, I am going to write, "So very thankful." Now, if you like, you could come in. I'm going to add a little line 1/8 inch above that. And I'm going to pencil it in. And then when we do the line work, I'm going to write, "So very thankful." It's roughly, see, here's the thing. It's roughly centered in here. And I think when I draw it, I'm just going to start over there a little further when I draw it. But I already have a guidepost. And then on this, I have this gold pen that I'm going to do a border on. And I'm also going to do the little squiggly, viney things that come off of pumpkins. So I'm going to do those, or am I? I'm kind of waiting for those green dots to dry. But anyway. And what I want to do is I want to have in my border, and here's a tip. This is a way to, if you want to border and you're not comfortable making a line all the way around, we cheat a little bit. We have ways of cheating. And so, like, I'm going to put a little heart, not in any regular way. In fact, I don't want it to be really obvious. Let's see, where else? It's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put one here. And then I'm going to put one, I don't want them to look like they're, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put another one right here. Okay, so when I come, whoops, do not smear. I did smear that a little bit. Oh well. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in and just make a really, I'm making it wiggly on purpose because not everybody has a super steady hand. So we work with what we got. If you don't have a steady hand, make a wobbly line or don't make a line at all. If something's not there, no one knows it. No one knows it intended to be there. So I'm just going right around. And then when that is completely dry, because this gold does take a couple of minutes to dry, then I will go in and erase those pencil marks. But doesn't that look sweet? So, okay, so on this one, I am going to use, yes, I'm going to use a Micron, and this is an 01. This is the waterproof ink. And I want to test it on here to make sure that, yes, indeed, this is what I want. And I have a lot of these pens, and some are a little tired. So I like to test to make sure that if I put the first mark on there that it's not funky. So since I know, I'm still waiting for that green to dry a little bit, I am going to go in and do my, my little greeting, which of course is kind of nerve-wracking because this is where things can go south fast. But if it does, it does. Oh well. Okay, so I'm just going to start drawing. This cuff on this sweater is kind of thick and it's kind of inhibiting me. So anyway, here we go. So I want to move over just a little bit. Actually, I could choke up. Let's see. No. Yeah, let's move this over just slightly. So I'm just going to start drawing. So yeah, this pen's a little weak. Ugh. Not in love. You just have to go slowly and deliberately. And then when everything is dry, I will come in and erase that. I don't hate it. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and do pencil lines. And I am going to ignore the pattern behind these. I'm just going to let my line work do its job. The green I'm going to leave till last. Okay, so this pumpkin, I am going to just start. Okay, so I'm going to go in. I keep hesitating. It's like I'm scared to start. Okay, I think because what I want to do is I want to start with the green, and this is dry enough. Okay, all right, Ronnie, quit waffling about. So I'm going to go in, and you know, I do a kind of a wonky but confident line. Okay, I think this pen did not do what I wanted to do. I'm switching pens. I'm hoping I can salvage that. Is this one better? Here. Okay, that one seems better. And it's a subtle difference. But anyway, here we are. Now, we're doing a pumpkin. So we're just going to put some ribs down the center. And they're kind of a curve. It's like I'm doing parentheses. I mean, these are cute without that line, but I think that adds just a little more pumpkin-esque to them. All right, and then the stem, I'm going to do kind of a curvy line because they have that kind of twisty. It's pretty cute. All right, and now we're going to do this gingham one. I mean, seriously, after how cute that gingham is, I think that's why I was hesitating. I'm like, am I going to ruin this? Maybe. And I'm not going to try to follow that gingham because I think that is going to look too fussy. So I'm just going to do, just like I would always do, is just start making those lines. Yeah, this pen is much better. Such a subtle difference between having a good pen and a not so good pen. Okay, I like that. And when you're using your pen, we want it to do a separate job. We're kind of letting it do it's doing something different than the paint. We're not just outlining the paint. We're making the line work enhance the design. Okay, so now we're going to come in to this one. I'm going to blob that a little more because it does seem a little stiff. I'm just adding a little more shape on the bottom. I like these. And one last part of that. I do love making marks. And every time you put a mark on a paper, it's a tiny little act of courage. It wasn't there before. You made the decision. You had the guts to do it. And okay, again, I'm going to erase the pencil down here because I think those letters got really wimpy. Wimpy is the word. When you look at the line mark there compared to the line mark there, that's just wimpy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to go over it because I know from experience that that's going to won't look bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fatten up one side. And that will give it a little more presence, that it goes better with what's happening with the pumpkins. And they're again tiny. It's two things. It's tiny marks, and it's also a really subtle difference than having that wimpy type that I had there. Just hitting it on one side. Sometimes you look at a letter and go, which way should that go? It's kind of a slow, simple movement. Okay. This actually is really cute, you guys. I was worried. I was worried. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come in with, okay, I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to come in with the gold. And you know how they have this, oops, that's not gold. Come in with my gold pen. And you know how they have those funny little vine things? Yeah. That's very cute. Okay. And I'm also going to come back with my paint and give that shadow just a little more presence right under the pumpkins. So back to my Payne's Gray. I don't want it to be too heavy. Just a tiny bit more water, just a teeny tiny. Okay, yes. And I'm just going to right where the pumpkin is hitting the surface, I'm going to come in just a little bit darker. And they're just, you know, you just kind of make these little sweeping motions. And same thing here, just a tiny bit. And that just gives it that much more presence. Can you see the difference there? I'm just going to put a little bit in there. You want it to look like it's really sitting, that it's got the, you want the pumpkins to have that weight. Okay. Except for erasing the corners, I will go in a little bit and tidy up that pencil. Make sure your gold is pretty well set before you come in there. And again, fairly light erasing to get that extra pencil off there. Okay, well, I think this came out really sweet. I'm probably going to round the corners. I know exactly who I'm sending this to, but I say that every week, don't I? But I do. And I will just put inside, I'm so very thankful for you. And I have to say, I am very thankful for you. And like I said, what you're doing takes courage and guts and a vote for the future. And I hope you enjoy this little project. I hope you enjoy all my little projects. And I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.